I just want to mention to everybody before I start the intro or the show that I'm experiencing technical difficulties to some degree today, and some of the sound quality may not be up to par, especially at the very beginning, and we had to restart and call the guests back, so there will be a spot with nothing on it. But if you will bear with the show, I think you will find that it was well worthwhile, and once you get past that first part that had the most trouble, the show gets much better. It never gets rid of the trouble altogether. I noticed there were a few spots that were troubled, but it was overall, a pretty acceptable show. And I'm going to keep the good parts and the bad parts, and I'm just going to warn you that they're there. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Kingsley Dennis, and we're going to talk about his recent book, The Stuggle For Your Mind. But before we actually get started on this, I'd like to remind everybody that if you're not listening live right now, you can join us live at www.paranormalpalace.com. And, the chat room is free. All you got to do is, get a free membership to the site, and it's there to kind of keep the spam bots out. Also, the website for the guest is going to be www.KingsleyDennis.com, and I'll be putting that into the chat room periodically, and I'm going to try to remember to mention it during the show if we're not too carried away in our discussion. I want to remind everybody to, of course, always make sure you invite your friends, and I hope you all enjoy the show today, and feel free to ask questions in chat, and feel free to call in. The call-in number, and I got to come back up here, I scrolled past it, is 832-632-7904. So I'm going to right now go ahead and bring, Kingsley in with us, and we're going to get the show started. Kingsley, how you doing today?
Thank you, Royce. I'm very well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be speaking with you. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on my show, and I've, like I was telling you earlier before the show started, I've really been getting a lot of pleasure reading your book and enjoying it over the last few days. If I didn't have a radio show, I'd probably have more time to read it nonstop. But, yeah, I got to tell you, this is a very highly controversial subject that you're writing about here. It's it's been written about before, and, I think it's a large area for concern. And I got to tell you, I think your work goes very well with Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock's work, The Master Game Plan. And I don't know if you've heard of that book yet or not, but they talk about these two spiritual forces that's been going on since the beginning of time. One of them for the, spiritual, the other one more materialistic, and they kind of record it through time. And I, reading your book kind of got me to thinking that, you talk about something similar in your book, only you talk about the application to the mind. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us, what was it that led you down this here's path to, writing this book?
Well, thank you, Rose. That's a good question. Because my background is that I've been coming through the field of sociology. And I worked for many years actually teaching sociology at the university. And so I have an interest in social forces and the social consciousness and the social mind. And the other hat that I wear is that for most of my life I've also been investigating and been interested in ideas of conscious evolution and consciousness and the inner self. So most of my life, these two fields, I've been living them separately, so to speak. And And then I came to a stage where my studies in sociology came to a point where I became very aware of the presence of these social forces, and so I decided to meld them together and to do a look and investigation from a social perspective of these forces and of conscious evolution, and also to have a look at it in a way which was grounded, a well-referenced way, because what I feel is that this subject needs to be talked about. It needs to be brought into the open. But for many years, it's been a subject which has been, I suppose, on the fringe or the periphery, and has been unfairly labelled such things as conspiracy or something which not everyone wants to touch. So I feel it's important to look at this in a very, grounded way, and to back up with support my perspectives. And so this conversation can be put on the table without it being rejected offhand. So that's why I come from a very social viewpoint, and I try not to give too much, I suppose, fanfare or to blow it out of proportion. So my perspective has tried to be, I suppose, as I say, grounded, and so it's a kind of amalgamation of sociology, consciousness studies, and a bit of new science, and this put together. So that's where I've come to with the book was.
Right. Well, listen, while I was reading your book, one of the things I did notice is how little people really realize the bombardment that they're having on a daily basis with other influences. And it really got me to even thinking about other influences that I didn't see mentioned in your book. Like a lot of people aren't aware of, for example, that if you got a router in your house, like a wireless router, that by the time it gets to a computer in another room, it's got that information going through the air, invisible. You can't see it. And if you're walking in between that information, your body's probably absorbing some of that alone.
Mm-hmm. Quite so. On one side, we can refer to it as function creep, is that slowly our social environments have been developing and building up the mass of information and the technology, etc. And it's almost been referred to as the boiling frog syndrome, which you may be aware of. For example, if you put a frog in and I don't recommend this, by the way, but if you put a frog in a bucket of boiling water, then obviously it's going to try to jump out straight away because of the shock. But if you put a frog in water which is cold or tepid, and then you put it under a low heat and slowly heat the water up, then the frog won't notice the change in temperature until the water is boiling, and it's too late. The frog is boiled, so to speak. That maybe is quite a crude analogy, but what it is that the slow build-up of our social forces is in a way that we don't notice them. We are living in a sea of social forces. So, for example, if you take the analogy of a radio, we have a radio station and we tune into a particular frequency. We're only listening to that frequency because that's where the radio is tuned in. So if you can say that's our attention or our consciousness, we are tuned into a particular thing or a particular focus. What we don't notice is that we're already in a environment of so many other distractions and interference. If you change that tuning of the radio a little bit, you jump into another radio station. But you don't notice that there's hundreds of radio stations because the attention is on one. So that's a kind of metaphor for our lives, is that we are in a sea of so many forces, but our attention, our focus is on a particular radio station. So, and that's part of the game plan, so to speak, is that our minds, our consciousness are focused on a particular area. We don't notice what is going on around us. And so there's an Eastern story which I think is quite applicable here. There's a little fish in the stream which has this burning question, and so it goes on a pilgrimage up the stream to find the wise sage fish. And after a couple of days of swimming, it meets the wise fish and says, "I have this burning question." "And what is it?" says the sage fish. And the little fish says, "What's this thing called water?" And I think that's quite a good analogy, is that when we are in the sea of our lives and our social environment, we don't tend to notice it. And that element of distraction is part of our lives, and that's what I tried to bring attention to in the book was.
Okay. Now, I was going to also ask you, to what degree do you think that we're really being affected by all of these influences?
Well, the effects can be on a myriad of different levels. What it is that I talk about social conditioning. Now, social conditioning is part of our lives from day one. Now, that may not be a bad thing in some respects, because obviously the area of the world that we are born into and brought up within, our early influences, environment such as our families, our schools, and our peers, that gives us a various conditioning steps. It could be part of our belief systems, our ideologies. Now, to a certain level, this is required in order to navigate through our lives. We need some signals or some steering signposts. So we need to fit in. It's important that we fit in socially. So we need a certain degree of social capacity. Now, if you take that further, and then, for example, if we are growing up and we are given the conditioning set of obedience to authority, such as through teachers at school, and then through people in uniform, and then through the civil service. The psychologist Stanley Milgram did his obedience to authority tests, which are very well known, about how people will obey authority above their own feelings of well-being, because it's conditioned that we follow authority. So there's certain conditioning, and then if we go through life, these conditioning sets are reinforced. So, for example, they are reinforced through it could be ideology of nationalism, for example, and then these sets can be reinforced through media and propaganda.
Okay, everybody, we're back now, and I think I got the system up and running, and let me call the guest and get him back on the line.
Hello?
Okay, Kingsley?
Yes, hello, Royce.
Yeah, this is Royce again, Paranormal Palace Radio. We're live on the air, and I just thought before we started the show real quick, I'd let you and the listeners both know that I do seem to have fixed the problem, and it was emanating from my end. As silly as this sounds, I forgot to turn Yahoo Messenger off, and it was evidently interfering with my system. Okay.
I was going to suggest maybe it was a supermoon.
So, now that we got everything back on track, and like I said, I do apologize. I've never had Yahoo Messenger on during a show before. I always turn it off because, they get that notification for an email. It would freeze up your system. And I guess it just one of those times I forgot about it. So I never had a chance to know that it would do that until just now. But where were we at anyway?
We're just talking about the different levels of social conditioning in society, Royce.
Okay. Well, coming back to what we were talking about that, because you went through a lot of different things on the list, from media to social influence in the workplace to religion to education, radio, all of it, the whole 9 yards. The question is, though, who would be at the top of the ladder pulling the strings on all of this information output?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. And in a way, the answer isn't so clear-cut or simple, because we tend to think that there is a person at the top who, as you say, is pulling the strings. But it doesn't quite work like that. The way the system is set up is it's like the system of the Russian dolls. When you take the top doll off, there's one inside, and you take it off, and there's another one inside. So it's very difficult to get to the origin of this. It's also, again, it's very difficult to point the finger at saying who is responsible, because the system is created so it's almost faceless. And, for example, we have governments who put out the policies. And the governments, in a sense, are a front, a facade. They put out certain policies, but the major players who operate the systems, let's say global systems, they're behind the scenes. And this has been well known for a long time. They use certain figures to implement things in society, and they are the figureheads. So, for example, a well-known example is if you have an issue with, let's say, your electricity or something, and you want to ring up and blame someone, you ring up, and what do you get? You get a recorded message, which then passes you on to another recorded message, and you go through so many of them that you in the end you can't find anyone to blame, and so the search gets lost within the system. And so that's how the larger social matrix, as I call it, is established. So you cannot trace it back to a particular person. So the culpability, the blame, is hard to find. So there are vested interests in putting out certain information that follows the status quo. And so for example, people watch television, they get the news, and they think, well, the news comes from hundreds of different locations, so it's all legitimate. Well, in fact, behind the news is who supplies the news, if we start asking those questions. And it tends to come from the news conglomerate agencies, i.e. Associated Press or Reuters Thomson. Now, these are the two major consolidated news sources, which then send out the news to a whole range of mainstream media. So they are centralizing the news. Now, if you ask the question, where do these centralized news bases get their information, a majority of it is government sources. They are fed information and then they send out to the different outlets. So in fact, what we think is that we're living in a world of choice, but in fact, it comes from a centralized source. It's the same thing in consumerism. We think we have a whole range of choices, where in fact most of the goods belong to the same these major corporate entities, which have hundreds and hundreds of front products. And although we think that they are competing together, they're not, because they're owned by the same company. So the illusion of choice is also the illusion of information in mainstream media. If we trace it back, it goes to some centralized sources. But beyond that, the centralized sources are owned by, as I mentioned in the book, a very select number of huge corporations, and which are then tied into huge financial families which own the corporations. But there's no Mr. and Mrs. X who are pulling the strings. There are just a number of major corporations and large financial families which are owning the major systems, Royce.
Right. So when you talk about these choices, what you really mean is rather than have a set of, like say, complete variety of choices of everything, you have a variety of choices that you're being presented while other choices are maybe being withheld?
Yes, I mean, the choice is in a sense illusory, but we have the sense of choice, because if, for example, you want to buy product A or product B, you think, well, I prefer product A because product A is better for me. So through the advertising, they advertise different aspects. But when you know that both A and B come from the same company, then instead there's not really much choice, because the competition is just illusory. But
I've heard of this with. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say I heard of this with elections of, like, say, presidential. That basically it wouldn't matter, for example, if you were to vote for a Democratic or a Republican, because they both really are being pulled by the same purse string with the same goals in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good example, because what you need to do is look behind the scenes and see who's involved. So, for example, we have Obama in the presidency, but Obama's close aide, for example, one of his advisors through his campaigning was Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the national security advisor for, I think, President Carter, and has been part of the establishment for many, many years. And so if you look behind the scenes, they're the same people who are known as civil servants, or civil servants in the British vocabulary. But they remain behind the scenes advising whoever's in power. And these are still the visible faces. There are many who are not visible. So although, for example, we feel that we have choice because Democrat or Republican is in power, the people who are within the inner circle and part of the policy making, etc., if you look, they've been there throughout many different presidencies, and the same power brokers are still there. They sometimes change, but they're still behind the scenes. So we get a new figurehead. And so, for example, many people now are saying, well, we thought Obama was different, but if you think about it, he's continuing the policies of Bush. I mean, this is a political question, so it doesn't remain in this area.
And, of course, Bush continued the policies of Clinton.
Exactly. So, there's a kind of illusory, let's say, change of guard. But, in fact, if you look at it, in fact, what we see is that there's been tweaking and some small changes to appease the element of change. But in reality, there's not been any grand change.
So basically, what you write about a lot in this book is that, and this is not the way your book words this, but this would be the way that if I was to translate it and describe it, it would probably come out. And if I get it wrong, please correct me and don't get upset with me. But it's almost as though we are actually willing pawns of our own demise, but not knowing we're doing it because we're just going along with the system.
Yes, right. No, I'd go along with what you say there, because what I do, I mean, I can add another way of saying it as well, is that if you don't see the prison bars, you don't think you're in prison, and therefore you never attempt to escape. And so what I feel is that the prison bars have been withheld from view, so we don't sense that we are in any kind of entrapment. So, I mean, a major theme of the book is to empower ourselves. And so we are, in a sense, have been pawns, or we're part of the system, mainly because of we're not aware of it, because our consciousness is so managed that we feel that we are free, we have a choice, and we live our lives mostly to a major degree contented. That may not be so much the case today. So what it is that I don't put any blame on people, but what I do say is that we should start to be more aware, wake up to the reality of the situation, and start to be more attentive and to filter the information around us, and to be more focused on the choices we make. So, because the system takes power away from us, we don't realize it, but in fact we give power away, and we give our dependency onto external forces. So throughout, what I try to stress is that it's time to empower ourselves and to give ourselves our independence, and not to give our power away. And that's all a matter of perspective and perception, Royce.
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, Kingsley, I've been watching things on my own for many years myself. And, from what I've observed, it seems to me just watching yourself, your family, your coworkers, and everything else around you, people are in a set pattern. Every day they do the same things. They get up, they go to work, they come home, eat supper, watch TV, the next day repeat, and then comes Sunday, many will go to church. But I mean, there's nothing new, nothing creative, nothing different. I mean, it's usually 9 times out of 10 the same old, and out of all of it, even the people that go to church, very few people are really looking inside of themselves and asking, is there more, and where's the creative factor, in other words? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Oh, exactly. It's set patterns, and on one side, majority of people don't like change. Let's be honest about that. Change can be unsettling, and I stress that is also part of our conditioning is to be fearful of change, because we should like the status quo. We need this conformity. We need this regularity. Everything's okay, Jack, kind of attitude, and that's reinforced by such ideas: keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with your neighbors. Fitting in with your peers. So, for example, if you want to think out of the box or something, you tend to be worried about that, about how will my neighbors think, if I start to speak differently. And so there's a kind of, we are our own regulators. We become our own watchers, or a stronger sense, we become our own jailers. And this is a system which has been used throughout history, throughout civilization, to take care of ourselves. Is that, as you said, there's so few people at the top of the pyramid that it could be difficult for them to be watching over everybody. So it's a kind of system where we watch ourselves, and so we almost spy on ourselves. Is that we look at people around us, and if someone starts acting out of sorts or coming up with some what we may call strange ideas, we try to put them in line, or we ostracize them, because we're not used to this, let's say, thinking away from the norm, and so that's part of the conditioning, the peer pressure, and many people think that, well, to get on in life, we have to fit in, and fitting in is agreeing to a certain ideology, agreeing to belief systems that are the regular consensus belief systems for our part of the world. And so yes, we tend to fear something new and doing something different and change, and so we regulate ourselves. So that's something which we should be aware of, start looking at, and taking power back to ourselves, and not fearing following what we believe to be true to ourselves, and starting to look beyond the consensus information, start to finding more information. And the internet is great for that as well.
Yeah, I've often thought about this factor that, it sure seems to me like there's a group out there, like you say in your book, that, well, they seem to be afraid of what's going to happen if you find out what's inside of you. If you get more in touch with God, or the God that's within you, your higher power, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know, your I am or your Christ consciousness. You know, many people call it many things. Why would people be so concerned if somebody was to actually get in touch with that, do you suppose?
Well, I mean, that is the big question, Royce. And, well, let's imagine if we can get in touch with ourselves and develop our inner awareness and start to develop our capacity to tap into, let's say, our own information source and to be more aware and develop our awareness, then we would realize that many of the social systems and the belief systems are just not only illusionary but damaging. And one of those belief systems, for example, is duality, them and us. Now, this them and us allows nations to go to war, to fight each other, and allows us to fear the other, to fear the terrorism and terrorists out there that could do us harm. And so that means that we look for authority to govern us and to make us secure. And now this goes back for centuries and millennia. Just imagine, I mean, only going back a few centuries, you mentioned religion. Well, certain religious sects, as the Gnostics, for example, they developed the inner knowing, the gnosis. Now, they were part of the Inquisition, and they were wiped out forcefully, such as the Albigensian Crusades against the Cathars. Because any teaching which says we don't need a middleman, a broker, you can get your empowerment direct through your inner development. Well, then that, in a sense, does away with the institution of religion and the church, because they are the brokers that are the custodians of religious knowledge. Where if people can empower themselves and have a direct source, then not only does that is a threat to certain religious institutions, it's a threat to social governance as well, because then we'll be more wary about social laws, information. We would then pass it through our inner knowing, and we might say, well, that doesn't fit with us. That doesn't make sense. That's not right. That's cruel. It's not harmonious. It doesn't fit with my conscience. And then if you have people questioning authority, then how do you have governance? And how do you have status quo? And how do you maintain control and the power systems in the world? So it's a kind of juggling act where you allow people to have a certain sense of autonomy and their independence, but as long as their consciousness is tuned in to the radio station that benefits the social status quo. And that's the main question. You know, we need to change the radio station to empower ourselves, but at the moment the radio station is locked, and that's the contestation that we're in at the moment, Roy.
I see. Well, yeah, and like I said before, I have noticed this here going on before, and I mean, in fact, if you look at the church, the ancient Catholic Church, they wanted you to go through the Pope to a God that's out there somewhere. Even Christianity today views God as in heaven somewhere other than inside of yourself, even if Jesus himself said the kingdom of God is inside of you. It seems like there's always been a group that's wanted you to look inside, the more spiritual group, and the group that's wanted you to view everything through the materialistic. It's almost as if being imprisoned in the material world, isn't it?
It is. Materialism is matter realism, and so yes, there's a difference between inner knowing and institutions. Now, if we look at the history of religion, since we're on the subject, I think probably all religious institutions were not established by the founders. Christ did not establish Christianity or the Christian church. That was established after his passing. And this is the same for more or less most religions. Because then as a way of maybe centralizing information, it becomes institution. The institutions get crystallized and get rigid over the years, and then they start to get set in their ways and then get into fixed patterns. So whereas inner knowing is always alive, is dynamic, it's always true to yourself in the moment. So institutions are a kind of are exactly what it is, an institution. So the information is more static, and it's a repository, it's a storage of information. But what's important is living information that is relevant to the moment and the time, and that exists within the person themselves. And that is an empowering source. And if people can tap into the moment, the empowering source within themselves, and to learn to trust the inner voice in one's conscience, then, when you compare that to institutionalized knowledge, there's a big difference. And if we take our power away from institutions, then those institutions fail. And that's the threat. And that's why there's been, the status quo does not want people to empower themselves in some respects. And we can see that going on, in the world around us.
Kind of like if people would govern themselves, they'd need no government.
In a sense, yes. But again, we have to understand that we need social harmony. So there's a difference. We're not calling for anarchy or anyone to do what they wish either. We are social creatures, and we need to exist socially, harmoniously within our communities. So we need that element of social understanding. But what we also need to develop is our own awareness and our ability to discern the world around us and to know what is right to do. Now, the reason why I feel many people are waking up now and being more aware of the situation is because the social structures and the ideologies which have been governing us for so long, we're now realizing that they're not working. Many of our systems are not sustainable. The ideologies aren't working. Our ideologies of our planet. I mean, look at the planet now. There's lots of crises happening. So we wake up and thinking, well, a lot of our belief patterns have brought us to this moment, and they don't seem to be working. So So although there's many crises happening, I would say these are opportunities and catalysts to make us rethink about our perspective and our beliefs and our ideology, to say, well, if some things aren't working, then let us change our perspective and our perceptions. Let us try to find something which does work. And I would say if we begin to trust ourselves and listen to ourselves and listen to our conscience rather than our consciousness, then we can start to understand what is right for ourselves. And, we should begin to trust ourselves and to start to find our own knowledge.
Yeah, which that makes a lot of sense to me. But, I mean, let's face it, Kingsley, if you go to a Buddhist religion, how are you going to know if that's really what God wants or what they think God wants? If you go to Christianity, how are you going to know any different? Same thing with Muslim or, any other religion. Everybody's, seeking for man to tell them, in other words, whether it be a, Sunday school teacher, a guru, or, it doesn't really make any difference. They're seeking for somebody, their fellow man who really, they're not sure knows any more than they do to guide them on where to go, aren't they?
Well, a lot of the responsibility is on the person themselves. Now, you will probably find that actually a lot of people who say they're looking for the truth or for someone to guide them may actually be looking for other things. They may be looking for a social group to belong to, or some affirmation that someone to say, yes, everything is all right, you are doing well. They may be looking to find like-minded people, or a sense of well-being, or a sense of attention. Not everybody is looking for, let's say, the truth or for true answers to the burning questions. There are many of the needs that people have, and religion and cults, they exist, and especially the cults, because they satisfy certain demands. And those demands could be social demands or needs for attention and affirmation, as I mentioned. So, in fact, less people than we may think are actually out there looking for the burning answer to their questions. So
it's interesting.
We have a responsibility to be looking for the right thing. And just to finish, there's a wonderful quote from an American writer, Thomas Pynchon. And Thomas Pynchon said, if they can get you asking the wrong questions, they don't have to supply the right answers. So I would say we need to look at ourselves and say, are we asking the right questions?
That's very interesting because I think I've seen that same phenomena in people myself that you were just talking about. I mean, it's looking for answers, but while you're looking, you already know. Like you said, looking for confirmation. You think you're looking for an answer, but you'll know they know when they find it because it agrees with what they already thought, in other words. But, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to agree with sometimes that we're looking for affirmation of a certain pattern set, a conditioning set, because we invest in our beliefs and our conditioning. So, for example, if we've spent half of our life feeling or believing something, then it's very difficult to give that belief up or to find some information which says that's not quite true because we've given half our life to it. So we actually find it's a stronger urge to find confirmation of our conditioning because that then we've given so much investment to it. So a lot of the seeking or our development is actually just trying to confirm what is our set pattern, and we have to look at that. We have to say what do I really need? What am I looking at? So the first question is to ask the right questions about our needs.
So doesn't this really go back in the long run to soul searching? Yes,
I would agree. Soul searching is inherent within all of us, and I would say each one of us is born with a sense of looking for completion, because we are uncompleted. We're not perfect in any sense, and sometimes we define that as looking for a career or status or the perfect soul partner or something. But whatever it is, you will realize that we are looking for something to complete us, and we start to define it as love, satisfaction, as I say, social status or career or something. But the common element is we're looking for completion. And if we go back to the source, so instead of going out to the exterior and finding things to complete us, go back to the source and say, what really is it that I need to complete myself? And then by actually, like you say, asking the right question about what it is we need, that's part of our guidance, because the conscience knows. We have these gut feelings, we have these instincts. If you listen to the instinct, it's rarely wrong, because I would say we do know what we need. We just have to listen to ourselves and start to develop our filters and start to be more aware of our impact.
I would agree with that, but while you were just speaking, I was just thinking that, this thing about, you were just saying it a minute ago, and I'm having a quick brain fart, looking for completion. Yeah, that's the one. I don't know, it popped into my mind while I heard you say that this seems to me like it would have its origins in duality. I mean, at the time that you begin to believe that you're separate from God, separate from the whole and everything else, from that point in time, you would probably be looking for completion, wouldn't you?
Yes, and the world, our sense of reality is a dual reality. It's duality. So being born in the world, immediately we have a sense of needing completion, because unity is not part of our present reality. As I said, we have them and us. We have the sense of the divine being out there in some place. Everything is separate. We have matter, which is an energy, two different realms. So the construction of our reality is based on duality. And so unification, being one, which many mystics have said this sense of unity comes through a sense of illumination or samadhi, etc., different vocabulary. is what we can find if we can go beyond reality. So our present reality is a manifestation of duality, and that's why we do have a sense of longing, a sense of loss, because we are in this reality which is not our source.
So, learning that this here duality is the source of incompletion, seeking for unity would be the cure for it, rather than seeking for wealth, marriage, family, or other things materialistic. We should be looking for inner unity to find that completion.
Inner unity is important, that we should be at peace with ourselves and develop ourselves. But at the same time, we live in this reality, we live in this duality, and therefore we have responsibility to also play our part, which means that we do need to be socially balanced and socially harmonious. So if that means having a family, which a family is a great expression of also part of the unity, because of the energy between a family is a great unifying energy. And so we can actually sense the residue of unity through certain elements in this world, which we should seek. So I'm not in any way saying that we should not look for certain social practices. We need to embed ourselves harmoniously within life. I would say one of the first prerequisites for seeking self-fulfillment is to have a balanced social life. If we're unbalanced in life, then we may find that our search for ourselves is also unbalanced. We need to have both sides in harmony, living socially with people around us and being participants in our world, and also at the same time having a connection to ourselves. So they are not incompatible. They should be mutually together.
Okay. And that's bringing us really pretty much up to the end of your book once you get past some of this other chapters. As you go in there to talk a lot about this here unity, which is, well, before we even get to that, because I almost forgot, as I was going to mention that one of the things you mentioned in your book that caught my attention was how we're all energy. And this energy in itself is something that is our unity, because we're all the same life source, all the same energy, the same consciousness, right? Yes,
and as part of what I've been saying in the book is that we are distracted away from this knowledge. So we are distracted to look outside of ourselves into division, into the old divide and conquer through fear and through insecurity and through what I call the current war economy and terrifying peace. All this distracts us and makes us worried, and it pulls us further into this social matrix of duality and etc. and distraction, disturbance. Where in fact, underlying all this, underlying our materialism, is the fact that everything is energy. Now, this has been talked about, again, for millennia by mystics and some spiritual traditions. I think the benefit we have today is what has been termed new science or quantum science, is that quantum science is now also being able to verify this. So we have tools that we can support ourselves and say, we can now look at the element of unifying energy without people giving us strange looks, because we have the ability to verify it. I think that's quite important. So quantum science is saying that beyond, if we go beyond matter to this, we are a sea of energy. And there's been many experiments about this, the split particle energy experiment that says that any particle which has been in contact, if you split them up, and they can go from opposite ends of the universe. If you measure one particle, its twin particle on the other side of the universe will react at the same time as though it's being interfered with, like the other particle, which means they have instantaneous connection. I'm speaking very briefly now, so I don't wish to confuse the issue, but I would recommend, if people are interested, they go and look at quantum science. But underlying that, quantum science says that our matter basically is like waves on an ocean. So although we look at the waves and we think a wave is singular, in fact it's part of an ocean which is all connected. And even now we have quantum biology, which is looking at this energy and saying, well, in fact, our bodies have the same energy. Quantum biology is saying our DNA is, in fact, a liquid crystal, which is gives off an energy field, and this energy field is an informational field, and that's how information is simultaneously a part of our body. It's a simultaneous information field. So we are resonating energy fields. And so, and therefore, for example, if we come in contact with someone, we have vocabulary such as, this person gives me bad vibes, or I get, this person sucks my energy away. We use vocabulary like that because, in fact, it has a very real source. We are energy, and we have energetic exchange with other people. And so understanding that, we realize that we are connected on a much more fundamental level. And as new science starts to expose this and make it common knowledge, I think that will be very useful that people understand that our thought processes and our behavior and our contact with people is also a fundamental part of our connectivity, not only our exterior acts.
Okay. Well, I want to remind everybody once again that Kingsley's website is www.KingsleyDennis.com, and I put it in the chat room a couple of times now for everybody. I also want to mention that if you scroll down and look below, you'll see his description, and you'll see there's also a link to his book where you can get it at Amazon, but you can also get to it from his website and from Barnes & Noble and other locations as well. So I want to invite everybody to, check out his book. It's very interesting. I think you'll find it very helpful and very useful. In fact, some people that might speak out publicly might want to share some of the information that's in it and use it for open discussion in groups. In fact, I think it could be helpful to a lot of people. But let's go ahead and move in, Kingsley, to the good news that's involved in this here. And, where do we have hope in all this here control?
Well, the good news is that, as we see in the world around us now, this control system is coming to a very shaky point, a tipping point. Now, part of that is because not only do we have a lot more information in the world, such as through alternative media, such as your radio station, Royce, and information that you are putting out and participating in this, we have our global communications, but also as a species, we're beginning to awaken, and we are beginning to realize that not everything is as it seems, and we are connecting together and spreading the word, and so this is a time of let's say contestation for the control system, which is why a lot of governments now want to bring in laws to clamp down on the internet, such as SOPA and ACTA, these laws, because they are getting quite worried that people are educating themselves, and so we have this awareness which is spreading, and I also feel that we have a different energetic environment now. And so imagine just 20 years ago, the conversation we're having now, Royce, will probably not be around 20 years ago. One of the great tipping points was in the 60s, that a lot of these ideas started to materialize and people were talking about them, but the authorities came down very quickly on this and tried to put a stop on many of the groups that were developing, let's say, altered consciousness and experimenting with different patterns of thought. What's happening now is that we are increasing our empathy. People are connecting around the world through social networks, etc., and they're realizing that we have a commonality, we have a common humanity, and people are connecting to strangers around the world and forming bonds. And so, this is slightly dangerous for the control system, is that they don't want everybody to have a sense of empathy. It's like, for example, during the famous scene just in the First World War when the Allied forces and the Germans came out of the trenches on Christmas Day and played football together. They were friends. They realized that they had a commonality. They swapped photos of their families, and the generals went crazy. They said, we can't let this happen, because if they had a brotherhood, they won't kill each other. So they put a quick stop to that. Now that's changed. We're having an increase on our brotherhood or humanity, let's say, on a global scale. And so this is a sign that we are moving into a global species away from a national species, and our borders are breaking down. We need to increase our connectivity, our communication, our consciousness. We need to spread the word, we need to talk with like-minded people, and we need to realize that we cannot go on as we have been going on. We cannot go on with this mindset of duality, of fear, of warfare, of trying to find battle. We need to connect up. We need to find our similarities. And our similarities are much stronger than our differences. And through this, we will actually start to bring in a different consciousness. And I also think we have an advantage of our younger generation that they are coming into the world with a different mindset to us, and they're saying, "I don't get this. I don't get the old mindset." And they are saying they are part of the change agents. And I think we're going to see a lot of change agents making a different world in the next generation.
Okay. Now, what you were talking about in your book was a time in the past when our ancestors, they were more connected to the spirit world, the psychic abilities, things of this here nature. And from the impression I got, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, okay, because they were, according to your description, able to communicate with, say, animals and other forms of creation. Am I to understand that if we attend to the inner spirit, we could return to such a time?
Yeah, I would say that you're accurate in saying that. I do mention that way back, the ancestors had a more natural sense of connectivity with the world around them because they were very heavily embedded with the environment. And so environmental forces were their sense of spirit. It was a very alive world. And of course, they had to be very careful of how they lived with the environment because the life was more precarious, and they had we may call it innocence, but they had a much more organic relationship with the world around them. Now, what I talk about is that we've entered a stage where we have a very rationalistic mindset, what I call a kind of technological mind, and this has been especially especially in the last few centuries. This has been developing in the sense that we started to try to control nature and to steal nature's secrets from her in terms to exploit that. And then, especially since the Industrial Revolution, we had a very mechanical left brain, which is a very rational, logical, linear way of thinking, which is control, order, hierarchy. And so we've been building the world around us, constructing it with this mindset. And I say we're living in, especially in the Western world, in techno-cultures, in that we're using technology in a very rational, logical way to exploit the world around us and to control the world around us. And that in fact pulls us into a very rational way of living, which then feeds the system, the feedback cycle. So we want to control nature, we want to use technology to control nature. It's all very rational, and yet our sense of the abstract, the right side of the brain, the sense of creativity, organic connection, and embedded with nature, that gets left behind. We're too. It's almost like watching the Star Trek films, and you see ladies with these huge heads, I think that could be a metaphor for us. We've developed this huge head of logical rationality which start to rule our lives, but we've decreased our sense of the heart, our sense of organic connectivity, of flow, of creativity, and our inherent connection with living life around us. And if we're not careful, our techno-cultures, our linear life will start to create a future which, if it continues like that, it'll be devastating for us because we cannot live in a living world with this mindset.
Kind of like a Terminator scenario where the machines take over.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. These films are a portrayal of a future which could be waiting for us if we continue down this technoculture, left brain type of thinking. They're very good scenarios. And looking at those films, I would say we don't want to go there.
I don't think I'd really care, dude. It didn't look so pretty on the screen when I saw it. But, yeah, I can understand what you're talking about. And, you know, really it is one thing to enjoy some of the pleasures here when while you're here, but it's another thing to make them your whole entire focus of every waking moment.
Yeah. You know, I'm not saying that certain logical left brain thinking is wrong. We need a certain element of it to have an understanding of life. What I call for is balance. Everything we do needs a modicum of balance. That if we need some way to think rationally to understand things, but we also need to feel with our hearts. We need to think creatively and out of the box and abstract as well. We need to balance our perceptions, and that's why we have many crises happening in the world today, because we've been developing on oversided, on too much on one way. It's not harmonious. So it's not about just giving up one way and moving out to not giving up the left brain and moving to the right brain. That's like throwing a baby out with the bathwater. We need to bring a harmonious perception to the way our lives do, and also to think with our hearts and feel with our heads, so to bring them in a better relation.
So you would say, in your opinion, that despite what some of these other gloom and doom teachers are saying about you better go stock up on extra food, extra water, batteries, the end's coming tomorrow, that what we ought to be doing is taking a more balanced approach, that's really, say, like way too much, left brain thinking, and it should be something more balanced, and what we ought to be doing is, raising our vibrational level more and learning to, cope with what we got now.
That's exactly it, yes. And I refer to those doom scenarios as the Armageddon meme. The meme, the thoughts of fear is that, that does disempower us. And if we're thinking, I must stock up and I must get loads of food in my house, well, if things do get extreme, then you think you're safer. If someone comes to your house with a gun, they'll take it from you. So what's the point of stocking up? I would say you're investing in the wrong area. Now, let's think of the same scenario. We can say there's nothing wrong with being prepared. And I would say, yes, we do need to be prepared. Maybe some disruptive times are coming. So what's the most balanced way of preparing for that? Is it a selfish way of stocking up your larder with lots of food and then shutting the door and locking it and saying, I'm all right, Jack? Or is another way of saying, well, why don't I get together with my neighbors, with my community, and invest in my community? We can perhaps look for a communal garden to grow together. And everybody has different skill sets. One person can be a gardener. One person may have a wonderful skill of mending things, and that they can mend things when they break down, and they can help you. And you may have a skill that you can help somebody else. Because we're limited if we stay on our own, isolate ourselves. If we invest in our community and start to come together and share things and to help each other, that is a lot more resilient and a lot more flexible for anything that may happen down the future. And so I would say that's a more balanced way of thinking about the situation. And it would be more productive as well to think that way. So being prepared, yes, but also being prepared by investing in something which is beneficial, i.e. networks of friendships, communities, and then you find out that actually we're much stronger if we connect rather than being separate.
Now, in your book, you were also mentioning that there are external forces that are helping us, even from outer space in the Milky Way area.
Well, yes, I'll probably rephrase that.
No, I might have phrased that wrong, and I do apologize if I did.
No, I just want to give a clear picture to any listeners that I'm not talking about anything spooky or science fiction. What I'm saying is that there are energetic forces, energies which are reaching us now, which are different than they were before. So For example, the galaxy emits plasma radiation, especially from the center of the galaxy, the black hole. And our sun emits sun radiation through solar flares and sunspots, etc. All the time, our Earth is receiving radiation and energies from the cosmos. That's nothing strange. That's a scientific fact. That's how life on this planet emerges. If there wasn't the sun and solar radiation, there'd be no life. And so now our solar system is part of a spiral, and it moves through a process of the spiral, which is going through its movements. Now, the solar system moves through different parts of the galaxy in its spiral movement. So, therefore, it is going through different areas of space. What I'm saying is that now many people have talked about this galactic center and the 26,000 years of the grand year. This is an astronomical term saying that we're moving through a grander cycle, not just a terrestrial cycle of 1 year, but a grander solar cycle, our solar system. So our solar system now is moving through a different part of the galaxy where it's receiving different energies from the black hole in the center of the galaxy. So because it's receiving different energies, these energies are stronger. And what I suggest is that evolution is actually receiving different energies, and they can impact upon our nervous system and have a different vibrational effect. Just the same thing as we have a vibration effect from the electromagnetic energies on our Earth. So I sense that these increased energies are affecting us, and in a sense, maybe also affecting us in a positive way by increasing our vibrational impacts. So these may be some of the forces which not only may be impacting the Earth and having Earth changes and more earthquakes on one sense, but in a positive sense, it's a time for great change. We're not only changing because of our social systems, our financial systems, our food systems are falling apart, but also there's energetic change now. So these can be a catalyst for grander change, larger change. So, don't fear change, don't fear the end, don't listen to these end time scenarios, because fear disempowers us. We should take this time as a catalyst to try to empower ourselves, make the change we want to see in the world.
Okay. Now, what are some of the other things that we can expect, say, between now and 2012, or maybe even a little bit after 2012?
Well, I think, we are going to see a convergence of effects, both physically and energetically. The convergence of physical effects are the tipping points in our systems, because if we have, for example, one system tipping, then we can more or less deal with that. If we have two or three tipping or coming to a crisis at the same time, then we can't ignore that. It's going to be a great change. So we have now a very strenuous time in our financial systems. They are being more or less artificially kept afloat. The financial system is bankrupt. All nations are more or less in debt, and it's the case of the emperor's new clothes. No one's really turning around and saying, the emperor's naked, because once you point the finger, the financial system will really collapse, and it's being held afloat. So we have a financial system. We have our food systems are crazy at the moment. We are shipping food around the world, and food is highly tied into the fossil fuel markets of petroleum. Huge amounts of petroleum is used as fertilizer, as pesticides, then in agro-business and agro-farming on a huge scale, and then for packing and plastics, and then for transporting around the world. And so with the price of fossil fuels going up in the world because of our resource situation, our food system will go up. Now, we need to invest in local food and farmers' markets, for example. And so I think we're having a rethink of our food systems. And so and we're having obviously lots of earth, the geopolitics is going crazy at the moment with the situation of the Middle East, etc., and lots of insecurity there. At the same time, we're having odd weather, climatic change, So all these are affecting at the same time. So there's obviously change happening in the world at a quite rapid rate. At the same time, there's talk about increased sun flares and sunspots and sun radiation, which is affecting the climate and affecting our energies and our moods and our emotions. So this is all putting the cold one together. It's a recipe for disruptive time or transitional time. But again, I will stress it's not a time at the end of the world. We're just going to see many things coming to a head. So I would say in the year ahead, 2012, it's a time to reflect upon where are we in our lives, who is around us, our community, our friends, our loved ones, our careers, and where do we wish to see ourselves? Because the world now is entering a time of uncertainty. Nothing is guaranteed. Our jobs are not guaranteed. Our savings, our pensions are not guaranteed. So where will we be in 10 years? Well, the question is, where would you like to see yourself in 10 years? And start to work towards that. We have to be more reflective now and consider about where do we want to see ourselves. And so this year will be maybe a great catalyst for making those type of decisions.
Well, we can certainly hope so. Now, also, I don't want to let you get out of here without asking you about that new book coming out, Science and Spirituality Reader at Intertradition Bearing Company, that I believe you're one of the authors amongst many that are adding to that book. Would you like to tell us a little something about that book?
Well, sure. Thank you. Yes, this is a book which I co-edited with my colleague Irving Laszlo, and we've asked 28 eminent thinkers in the field of both science and spirituality to contribute an essay about trying to bring these fields together. Again, we talk about duality. Now, the old paradigm has science against spirituality. People who are scientific thinkers have, in the past, derided spiritual thinking, and even spiritual thinkers themselves have been, many of them have been quite derogatory against science. Now, if you look at quantum science, quantum science is almost spiritual. It's the same thing. What I feel we're going to a time now where we're unifying these different fields, and science is verifying spirituality, and spiritual insight is verifying science. And this is important that we start to, instead of going through a divisive time, we should start to verify and to support ourselves and unify our perceptions and our thinking. So these people such as Deepak Chopra, Greg Braden, Dwayne Elgin, Bob Marks Hubbard, and such people, scientists Stanislav Grof and others, we've asked them to contribute a think piece about trying to unify science and spirituality. So that's part of our contribution to unifying these two fields into one.
Okay. Also, do you have any other plans or anything else coming up that you'd like to share with our listeners? Book signings, conferences, or workshops, or you get the idea?
Well, thank you, Ruth. Nothing immediate. I say I'm based in Spain, and I'm more European-based. So the best way to get hold of any information about me is from the website. Now, I write a lot of essays, and I try to write a lot of small essays to be able to be up to date and to give out information quickly, rather than obviously just the books. And also I'd like to say that I'm a co-founder of an organization called WorldShift International, and WorldShift International was founded to try to engage and to support both inner and outer change in the world. And we have a social network where people are part of the social network. People come and have conversations, and we talk about such things as new methods of agriculture and gardening and new community measures, as well as we talk about conscious evolution as well. So that site is what I'm a part of, to try to get people joined in a global conversation. So please come. That is, if you Google WorldShift International or look at the link from my site, that is a place where I'd welcome many people to come and join us in the conversation. So I would say we all have responsibility to empower ourselves. Don't believe what I've said now. I'm speaking from my perspective. I would hope that anyone would go away, think about it, reflect themselves, do their own research, and come to their own conclusions. So I'm not here to tell anybody how to think. I'm here to say we need to start thinking how to think. And if they wish to get in touch with me or come to my come to social network, we can start the conversation.
Okay, and that's www.worldshiftinternational.org, and I'm putting that in the chat room as well. I went to your website. Well, I had your website open. I just scrolled down to the bottom and clicked on the link and, pulled it up real quick.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. That's the power of information. We can share information, and we can take it as a rebuttal. And I would like to again stress it's everyone's responsibility to look look for their own answers and to find ways to empower themselves. And we all have the capacity. Let not negative thinking into our headspace. This is a time now to start to have confidence in ourselves, to connect, and to move forward through this.
And also to realize that life's about more than just your TVs or your cars or, eating out. I mean, those are all nice and enjoyable, but, if you take care of the outer and, you might use an analogy of washing dishes or a coffee cup. Who wants to wash the outside and then drink out of a dirty inside, or who wants to clean the inside and then handle the dirty outside? I mean, you got to take care of both the inside and the out.
Exactly, I agree with you, Royce. We need to take care of both sides, and we have responsibility for both sides. And we often we're afraid to let go. We're stuck in these comfort zones. There's a lovely joke on this. There's a man hanging off the edge of a cliff with one hand, and he's going to fall. So in his moment of desperation, he calls up and he says, "Oh God, if there's a God up there, please now, I need you. Tell me what to do. Help me." And then all of a sudden, he hears this great booming voice coming down from heaven saying, "Let go." And then the man silent for 1 or 2 seconds, and then shouts back, "Is there another God up there?" So, we're stuck in this pattern of thinking where we need support, we need to feel dependency, but we need to trust ourselves and let go and find our own way.
Okay. Well, listen, Kingsley, it's been a great time I've had talking with you, with the exception of the technical difficulty at first, and I've really enjoyed having you here. I kind of hope you'll be willing to come back again in the future and share some more information with us.
Sure, thank you, Royce. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I enjoy these conversations, and I'd be very happy to come back. It's all about talking to one another, spreading the word, and joining the global conversation. And I'm happy to be speaking like this, and I'm grateful that you've given me an opportunity to invite me.
Oh, I enjoy doing this here, and I really enjoy the people I meet. I've had this show for like 5 years, and I got to tell you, I've met some of the most interesting people and discussed a wide range of subjects. There's so much out there to learn, and there's so many people to meet, and authors, I think, are some of the most interesting people I've ever seen.
Well, we all have such great capacity, and all of us, not just authors or yourself and other people listening, that we are humanity, and we should start to pat ourselves on the back and say, we deserve a better world, and we have the power to co-create that, and we are the life that moves forward. And I would glad to say thank you to everyone listening to this, and I appreciate everyone's time.
Okay, and I'll be putting this into the archives and moving it to the archives probably tomorrow, I would imagine, and putting it up on YouTube and a couple other video sites so people will be able to access it. I can't put your book up at YouTube or somewhere like that, or link to it, but I can put the link up to your book when I archive it at my site. So, folks, this will be here at my site for future reference. If y'all can come listen to them, see what you think of them, click on the book, get right to it. The link to his site's going to be there. In fact, I'm going to add the second link to your second site, which I didn't add on the description earlier when I move it. And in the meantime, I want to go ahead and thank you and call this show a wrap. I've got a few other things to share with the listeners, but they got nothing to do with your book, the usual, what my next show is and people they might want to visit type of thing, but I don't want to hold you up for that. Got your information, and if it's okay with you, I'll stay in touch with you.
Well, thank you, Royce. You've been very generous there, and I appreciate that. So thank you for everything you've done and for helping to spread the word. And again, thank you for, having your radio station and being part of the change and being part of the conversation. And let us stay in touch, and I wish you well, and for the time ahead, it's been a pleasure, and I wish everyone well who's listening. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Yep.
Well, I hope I didn't just cut them short. Okay, everybody, now to move on to the rest of what we're going to talk about real quick, like before I actually end the show, I want to actually check, make sure I didn't disconnect myself. I'm still registering, so I'm assuming I didn't. I want to let everybody know that our next show is going to be Monday. That's tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, day after tomorrow. My guest last Saturday, he had to reschedule at the last minute because he had to go put his mother in the hospice, and he was dealing on the phone with it all day, and he didn't want to have the line tied up during the show when he needed to be talking to them. So he's agreed to come back this Monday, the 5th, at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that's going to be Robert Taylor, A New Way to Be Human. And actually, it's the second time this man's been rescheduled. The first time, I was having technical difficulty. The second time, he had an emergency on his end. So hopefully this third time will be a charm. And then we're going to have the regular Tuesday show, May the 8th. Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't May the 5th. May the 5th is today. Monday, May the 7th. Robert Taylor, A New Way to Be Human. Tuesday, May the 8th, the regular show at 8 p.m. Andre Anglin, the outlaw journalist, and he's got some interesting information for us. He was recommended by Bard of Eli. And then next Saturday we'll have our regular show. We're going to have John Andrew Goodman returning to talk about synchronicity, I think he was talking about the synchronicity code, if I remember correctly. Don't want to go too far down the schedule because I got so many lined up that it might be forgotten anyway. But just want to also remind everybody, don't forget to stop by and visit the folks at World UFO Today. You can find a link to them on the right-hand upper corner, just below my logo, beside my player, if you want to give them a visit. Look in the menu on the left-hand side of my site or my page and scroll down to Other. You'll see the Friends link, and then below that, in advertising, you'll see the Radio Favorites link. But under the Friends link, you'll see, you click on that page, you'll have banners going to some social networks and forums that I'm a member of that I recommend. And one of them is the Alien UFO Community at UFO space community.ning.com. It'd be easier just to click on the actual banner here at my site. And that's a social network with groups and chat and everything you can imagine. And then there's Supernatural UFO, www.supernaturalufo.com. And this is a forum with some great discussion and some really great folks in it. And then there's United Paranormal International. And I've got a lot of friends over there. It's got a lot of members. The site's very active. There's a lot of knowledgeable people. There's a lot of authors and researchers and investigators over there. And it's a great place to learn. And if you click on the radio link, you'll see banners to radio shows. Now, these are mostly hosts that I've either had on or I've been friends with or both. UKPN Radio with Gary Brown. Great show. Give them a listen. Jim Harold, his show is The Campfire, or Around the Campfire, I think it is, or True Campfire Stories. Click that link. Go visit him at www.jimharold.com. I think you'll enjoy his show. The Graylian Report with Micah Hanks. He's also the author of Mysticism, Magic in the Molecule, a great book. I've read it myself. Micah's a good friend of mine. He's going to be returning to my show in the near future, and I think you'll enjoy hearing what he has to say. But give him a listen, and I think you'll enjoy his show. And then there's Ohio Exopolitics Radio with Mark Hamill, and I think you folks will enjoy these here shows if you'll go pay him a visit. In the meantime, I'm going to call this show quits for now, and I'll look forward to seeing everybody this coming Monday at 8 p.m. That's Monday the 7th. That's Central Standard Time. Thank you very much.
Did this in a very, grounded way, and to back up with support my perspectives. And so this conversation can be put on the table without it being rejected offhand. So that's why I come from a very social viewpoint, and I try not to give too much, fanfare or to blow it out of proportion. So my perspective has tried to be, grounded, and so it's a kind of amalgamation of sociology, consciousness studies, and a bit of new science, and this put together. So that's where I've come to with the book was.
Right. Well, listen, while I was reading your book, one of the things I did notice is how little people really realize the bombardment that they're having on a daily basis with other influences. And it really got me to even thinking about other influences that I didn't see mentioned in your book. Like a lot of people aren't aware of, for example, that if you got a router in your house, like a wireless router, that by the time it gets to a computer in another room, it's got that information going through the air, invisible. You can't see it. And if you're walking in between that information, your body's probably absorbing some of that alone.
Mm-hmm. Quite so. On one side, we can refer to it as function creep, is that slowly our social environments have been developing and building up the massive information and the technology, etc. And it's almost been referred to as the boiling frog syndrome, which you may be aware of. For example, if you put a frog and I don't recommend this, by the way, if you put a frog in a bucket of boiling water, then obviously it's going to try to jump out straight away because of the shock. But if you put a frog in water which is cold or tepid, and then you put it under a low heat and slowly heat the water up, then the frog won't notice the change in temperature until the water is boiling, and it's too late. The frog is boiled, so to speak. That maybe is quite a crude analogy, but what it is that the slow build-up of our social forces is in a way that we don't notice them. We are living in a sea of social forces. So, for example, if you take the analogy of a radio, we have a radio station and we tune in to a particular frequency. We're only listening to that frequency because that's where the radio is tuned in. So if you can say that's our attention or our consciousness, we are tuned into a particular thing or a particular focus.
I just want to mention to everybody before I start the intro or the show that I'm experiencing technical difficulties to some degree today, and some of the sound quality may not be up to par, especially at the very beginning, and we had to restart and call the guests back, so there will be a spot with nothing on it. But if you will bear with the show, I think you will find that it was well worthwhile, and once you get past that first part that had the most trouble, the show gets much better. It never gets rid of the trouble altogether. I noticed there were a few spots that were troubled, but it was overall, a pretty acceptable show. And I'm going to keep the good parts and the bad parts, and I'm just going to warn you that they're there. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Kingsley Dennis, and we're going to talk about his recent book, The Struggle for Your Mind. But before we actually get started on this, I'd like to remind everybody that if you're not listening live right now, you can join us live at www.paranormalpalace.com. And, the chat room is free. All you got to do is, get a free membership to the site, and it's there to kind of keep the spam bots out. Also, the website for the guest is going to be www.KingsleyDennis.com, and I'll be putting that into the chat room periodically, and I'm going to try to remember to mention it during the show if we're not too carried away in our discussion. I want to remind everybody to, of course, always make sure you invite your friends, and I hope you all enjoy the show today, and feel free to ask questions in chat, and feel free to call in. The call-in number, and I got to come back up here, I scrolled past it, is 832-632-7904. So I'm going to, right now, go ahead and bring, Kingsley in with us, and we're going to get the show started. Kingsley, how you doing today?
Thank you, Royce. I'm very well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be speaking with you. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on my show, and I've, like I was telling you earlier.
What we don't notice is that we're already in a environment of so many other distractions and interference. If you change that tuning of the radio a little bit, you jump into another radio station. But you don't notice that there's hundreds of radio stations because the attention is on one. So that's a kind of metaphor for our lives, is that we are in a sea of so many forces, but our attention, our focus is on a particular radio station. So, and that's part of the game plan, so to speak, is that our minds, our consciousness are focused on a particular area. We don't notice what is going on around us. And so there's an Eastern story which I think is quite applicable here. There's a little fish in the stream which has this burning question, and so it goes on a pilgrimage up the stream to find the wise sage fish. And after a couple of days of swimming, it meets the wise fish and says, "I have this burning question." "And what is it?" says the sage fish. And the little fish says, "What's this thing called water?" And I think that's quite a good analogy, is that when we are in the sea of our lives and our social environment, we don't tend to notice it, and that element of distraction is part of our lives, and that's what I tried to bring attention to in the book, was.
Okay. Now, I was going to also ask you, to what degree do you think that we're really being affected by all of these influences?
Well, the effects can be on a myriad of different levels. What it is that I talk about social conditioning. Now, social conditioning is part of our lives from day one. Now, that may not be a bad thing in some respects, because obviously the area of the world that we are born into and brought up within, our early influences, environment such as our families, our schools, and our peers, that gives us a various conditioning steps. It could be part of our belief systems, our ideologies. Now, to a certain level, this is required in order to navigate through our lives. We need some signals or some steering signposts. So we need to fit in. It's important that we fit in socially. So we need a certain degree of social capacity. Now, if you take that further, and then, for example, if we are growing up and we are given the conditioning set of obedience to authority, such as through our teachers at school, and then through people in uniform, and then through the civil service. The psychologist Stanley Milgram did his obedience to authority tests, which are very well known, about how people will obey authority above their own feelings of well-being, because it's conditioned that we follow authority. So there are certain conditioning. And then if we go through life, these conditioning sets are reinforced. So, for example, they are reinforced through, it could be ideology of nationalism, for example, and then these sets can be reinforced through media and propaganda.
Earlier before the show started, I've really been getting a lot of pleasure reading your book and enjoying it over the last few days. If I didn't have a radio show, I'd probably have more time to read it nonstop. But, yeah, I got to tell you, this is a very highly controversial subject that you're writing about here. It's it's been written about before, and, I think it's a large area for concern. And I got to tell you, I think your work goes very well with Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock's work, The Master Game Plan. And I don't know if you've heard of that book yet or not, but they talk about these two spiritual forces that's been going on since the beginning of time. One of them for the, spiritual, the other one more materialistic, and they kind of record it through time. And reading your book kind of got me to thinking that, you talk about something similar in your book, only you talk about the application to the mind. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us, what was it that led you down this here's path to, writing this book?
Well, thank you, Rose. That's a good question. Because my background is that I've been coming through the field of sociology. And I worked for many years actually teaching sociology at the university. And so I have an interest in social forces and the social consciousness and the social mind. And the other hat that I wear is that for most of my life I've also been investigating and been interested in ideas of conscious evolution and consciousness and the inner self. So most of my life, these two fields, I've been living them separately, so to speak. And then I came to a stage where my studies in sociology came to a point where I became very aware of the presence of these social forces, and so I decided to meld them together and to do a look and investigation from a social perspective of these forces and of conscious evolution and also to have a look at it in a way which was grounded, a well-referenced way, because what I feel is that this subject needs to be talked about. It needs to be brought into the open. But for many years, it's been a subject which has been, I suppose, on the fringe or the periphery, and has been unfairly labelled such things as conspiracy or something which not everyone wants to touch. So I feel it's important to look